do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
It's trade season. I am recording this late Monday evening. It's about midnight Mountain Time, which is 11 Pacific, and about 2 a.m. Eastern. So anything that has happened after this will not be in the video. This is scheduled to go up in the morning, but I'm going to be recapping everything from the Dennis Schroder move to the Lakers all the way through the Bogdan Bogdanovic sign and trade to the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're going to break down really quickly every trade that went down today. Probably planning on doing another one of these after tomorrow, and then we'll do a draft recap as well. So get ready. We're going to go kind of rapid fire style through some quick thoughts on all the trades that went down today. And let's just get right into it. My name is Ethan, this is Courtside TV. Today we're recapping day one of the NBA offseason. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Alright, so yesterday we had the first deal go down, and that was Dennis Schroder to the Lakers in exchange for Danny Green and the 28th overall pick in Wednesday's draft. I like this one for both teams. I think it makes sense for both sides to, do what they want to do. The Thunder are rebuilding. The Lakers are obviously trying to go back-to-back. And so for the Lakers, getting Dennis Schroder, I think, is a clear upgrade over Danny Green. He is a better player at this point. Almost won Sixth Man of the Year last season, and a good catch-and-shoot guy when, if he's playing off ball. And in the postseason, we know that LeBron likes to take over the ball a little bit more. But in the regular season, he can kind of help take those playmaking responsibilities away, stagger with LeBron, be that lead guard. And then, in the postseason, he will be a good catch-and-shoot player, and he can, be in that LeBron James system. The only thing I question here is the locker room fit, because we know that he was well behaved last year with Oklahoma City, but in the past with Atlanta and things like that, he's had some incidents and some run-ins with teammates. So that's the only thing that I question, is whether or not he'll be a good fit in that locker room. But there's nothing to suggest that he won't be able to be a good team player and all that. So I think it'll work out for the Lakers. That's definitely a clear upgrade, and that just makes them even better. It's not significant, but I think it's certainly an upgrade. And then for OKC, you're getting the 28th pick, which is nice. You get, to add another young player to the team, or potentially package that pick with some other things in a trade on draft night or at some point, in order to maybe move up or get a different player or whoever. Danny Green is not in the long-term plans at all. I would not anticipate him to be on the team past the trade deadline. I think they're going to try to find, somewhere else to flip him this offseason, maybe turn this deal into a 3-team trade and send Danny Green to a different contender, or, at the deadline, if they still can't find somebody, he's some sort of a buyout candidate, maybe they can just buy him out and he can sign on with a contender for the minimum. That would certainly be a nice pickup for anybody at the deadline if that does happen. So Danny Green, not in their future plans. And Schroder is also an expiring contract to the Lakers, so maybe they want to re-sign him, maybe not. But the biggest thing that came out of this to me is the Lakers are now out of the running for really any other big move. They had been linked to maybe Chris Paul, which we know he's already been dealt. Even Victor Oladipo or DeMar DeRozan or somebody like that. Danny Green was their big salary matching piece, and now he's not there anymore, so they realistically can't trade for anybody making $20 million or more. They just can't make the salaries work, and so they're not going to be able to get DeMar DeRozan, who they had been rumored to be interested in. They're bringing in Schroder instead, who honestly I think that's just as good of a fit. DeRozan probably would have made them a better team, but Schroder is just a very good consolation prize, and maybe the DeRozan stuff wasn't even real anyway. So I like this move for both teams. I think it works. The Thunder get, an asset pick moving forward, and they'll be able to, Danny Green's an expiring contract. Maybe they can break him down into some more pieces, and the Lakers upgrade. So overall, win-win for both sides. And when I say every trade, I mean every trade. We're getting into all of them. This was the smallest deal of the day. It was Bruce Brown to the Brooklyn Nets in exchange for Dzanan Musa and a 2021 second-round pick via the Raptors. I like this one for Brooklyn. I think they were rumored to have liked his defensive ability, and that's why they brought him in. I think it makes sense. They can get a guy who probably is a more win-now player. He's a little better at this point. Musa, I think, probably has a higher ceiling, but he's not going to help you win a championship in the next 2-3 years, and obviously that's what the Nets are looking to do. And so Bruce Brown, I think he's a good wing defender. He probably won't play too much, but he can play some backup minutes. And then for Detroit, you're getting a guy, like I said, he probably has a higher ceiling and a second-round pick out of it. Not a super consequential deal for them, but I think I like this one for them too, because Bruce Brown, to me, is a guy who I think is already about as good as he's going to be. I don't really know how he gets much better at this point. I think he's kind of, he's going to be a good wing defender, hit a couple shots, but he's never really going to be a high ceiling type of guy. And so they're bringing in somebody who might pop in a couple of years and be something there for you, and a second round pick. Not a hugely consequential deal for them, but I like it for both teams as well. All right, and here was the big one of the morning. We have Chris Paul to the Phoenix Suns. So Chris Paul and Abdel Nader in exchange for Kelly Oubre, Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Jalen LeCue, and a 2022 first-round pick, and I believe it's top 12 protected that year, and then I think lottery the next year in top 20 the third year, something like that. The projections decline over the over the next couple seasons, and eventually it becomes unprotected. The Suns are probably going to try to convey that in 2022. It looks like, Chris Paul will still be on the roster, Devin Booker, and so they probably will be a good enough team that year, barring any crazy injury or some crazy trade request. It looks like that pick will probably convey that season. So it's a 2022 Suns first rounder, and then basically just matching contracts and a couple of young players that aren't too much. I really, really like this for Phoenix. I think it makes perfect sense for them. It allows them to push for the playoffs in the Western Conference. Does it put them in the position to win the title? Probably not. This team, as currently constructed, doesn't feel like a title threat to me, but I don't really think that they're seeing it that way. I think they just want to get back into the playoffs. It's been a long playoff drought for Phoenix. I think they're hungry to start winning again, and Devin Booker certainly is, and so is DeAndre Ayton. And so I think that having Chris Paul, after the year he just had, he can come in and mentor those young players, show Devin Booker how to win basketball games, help DeAndre Ayton now be a good pick and roll partner for him. I think it's perfect for Phoenix. He's got 2 years left on the contract, and by the time that's up, then you've extended DeAndre Ayton already and stuff. That's kind of going a little far down the line, but I really like this fit for Phoenix, and I think it makes sense for them to try to push for the playoffs immediately, capitalizing off of that strong bubble run that they just had. For Oklahoma City, this feels like, this is probably the best return you could have gotten for Chris Paul. He was seen as a poison pill contract last offseason. It was just so like, oh my gosh, this contract is horrible. How are they ever going to get rid of this? They're getting it back from Russell Westbrook, and it's just this huge bad contract, and Chris Paul is old, and he's always injured and all that stuff. But he turned in a really, really good season, raised his value up, and so they were able to get off of this for Kelly Oubre, who's an expiring contract, Ricky Rubio, who I believe has 2 years left, and then Ty Jerome, Jalen LeCue are not making any money. Those are young players that might be something. Ty Jerome, I believe, is a first-round draft pick next year, maybe early second, and he is, I believe he was a 3-4 year college player, and he's a guy who can maybe be something for you. Jalen LeCue is young, really athletic. Maybe he turns into something. And that first round pick will be, probably not amazing, but mid to late first round. It's still something, and you're able to get off that money and break it down into some smaller contracts. Would not be surprised to see Rubio and Oubre rerouted. This is similar to the Danny Green thing for me. The Thunder are just acquiring a lot of these contracts, and they don't really care about the players that are on them. Would not be surprised to see Oubre moved, although he is young, and maybe they view him as a long-term piece. At only 25, they'd have to extend him, but maybe Oubre they view as somebody who can potentially be something down the road. Rubio is a guy who I think they'll flip. He certainly has some value to some teams, maybe into that Golden State Warrior trade exception. I don't know. But that's a guy who they might be able to flip for even more picks. Same thing with Danny Green, like I mentioned earlier. And Steven Adams as well, who is still on the roster. That contract is pretty big, but it's expiring, so if somebody's out there desperate for a center, maybe they can flip that. So for Oklahoma City, just adding more picks to their war chest there, and they're tearing down this roster. Like I mentioned, Steven Adams trade is going to happen if they can find a taker for it. Maybe a sign and trade for Danilo Gallinari if somebody else wants to get him. And then just really try to roll with the young guys. Develop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You have 2 late first-round picks this year. You're going to have a ton of picks over the next 5, 6, 7 seasons. And so Oklahoma City's rebuild is looking like it's going to be... It's off to a really, really good start. They've turned Russell Westbrook and Paul George into a lot of stuff. And so, they're going to be pretty much drafting everybody over the next couple years. So watch out for OKC once they can cash in all these draft assets for somebody. So I really like this return for Chris Paul, and I like this move for Phoenix as well. So far, all these trades I think are major wins for all the teams. So this trade kind of got lost in the shuffle because it went down like 2 or 3 minutes before the big Jrue Holiday one, which I'll get to. But we have Robert Covington to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for Trevor Ariza, the 16th pick in Wednesday's draft, and a 2021 protected first-round pick. I don't believe we know the protections on that. As far as I've seen, Woj or Shams has not tweeted out a clarification. I could be wrong there, but I'm not sure what the protections on that deal are. So this one, I was kind of surprised by this going down. Portland was kind of a dark horse team for Covington. I had not thought of them as a potential destination, but I like the fit there. They're able to get, a guy who can come in, play solid defense, three-point shooter. We saw how valuable Covington was to Houston in their last postseason run, and he now finds himself on another Western Conference contender, and they, I don't think it makes them like a ton better, but it's certainly a nice fit there. And he is just basically a very similar player to Ariza, but a lot younger, and is actually going to be available because Ariza didn't go to the bubble, and so they didn't have him there. And hopefully Covington will be able to come in and play some nice minutes for Portland. I like the fit there. I think it makes sense next to Dame and CJ. They've had a couple of wings like this in the past that are good defensively, pick and pop 3-point shooters, and so Covington I think is a good fit there. And for Houston, you're getting 2 picks back, and the 16th pick is a pretty good asset for the Rockets there. They didn't have a first round pick. They gave it away to get Covington in the first place, and now they're getting a pick back. And so 16th is pretty good. That's right outside the lottery. You can get somebody good there in this draft. So that's a pretty big win for the Rockets, especially if they are going to be looking to rebuild, because who knows what the heck is going on with James Harden and Russell Westbrook right now. Maybe James Harden gets dealt, and then in that case, they're going to have a lot of picks over the next couple of years, and this one might get them started on a pretty hefty rebuild if they are looking to trade James Harden. So that's, a big topic for another day if that ever actually goes down, but I like this for them. Depending on what the protections are next year, I'm anticipating maybe like lottery or top 20 protected or something, so it might convey next season. It's kind of a lot to give up for Portland. 2 first-round picks. It's a pretty hefty price. Yes, Covington is good, and I like the fit, but 2 first-rounders is a lot. Trevor Ariza is nothing. He's old and is not, he's nothing. He's just there for salary matching. Houston, he's been on the Rockets like 3 or 4 times now, and so, he's, like 35 now and has like 2 years left on his contract. And maybe they can flip him again to somebody else down the line, but I just don't think Ariza is very good anymore. So it's basically Covington for 2 first-round picks, and it's kind of a lot. I like this for the Rockets. And what does this signal that they're now going to try to move on from PJ Tucker as well? Daniel House or Eric Gordon, along with their 2 stars. Maybe there's going to be a big teardown in Houston, and if not, if they can't find a taker for Westbrook and they don't want to trade James Harden, then what does the rest of the roster look like? It's all up in the air right now, but getting this pick is a step in the right direction, I think. So I like it for Houston. I like the fit for Portland, but I think they might have given up too much there. All right, so Jrue Holiday. It was pretty quiet all day long. We were kind of like, what's happening? We've only had like 2-3 trades all day, and now it hits like 10 o'clock and boom, there's Jrue Holiday has been traded. Here's the package. Jrue Holiday for Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, 3 future first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. That's a lot, but I think it makes sense for the Bucks to do this. We have now heard rumors that they're going to be able to sign Giannis to the Supermax. If they are able to do that, that changes my whole perception of this trade, because if they do sign Giannis, you're basically trading all those picks to keep Giannis as well as acquire Jrue Holiday and then Bogdan Bogdanovic, who we'll get to. This is, 3 future first rounders and 2 swaps. That is a lot for Jrue Holiday. A lot of people were expecting his market to not even be anywhere close to that. like people were like, oh, maybe a first rounder, maybe 2, and like a young player, but 3 first round picks and 2 swaps, that's a lot. And now if Giannis does end up leaving, the Bucks are screwed, because those picks, unless they've got protections on them, those picks are going to be really, really good for the Pelicans. If Giannis leaves, then the team is going to be bad. So, and they just won't have anything to rebuild with. So we'll have to see how any of this goes down, but it's looking more and more likely that Giannis will sign the Supermax deal. Maybe they got a commitment from him. They're like, hey, if we can pull these trades off, make this team better, will you re-sign? And he said, yeah. So they're going all in. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see on that. But as for the basketball fit here, Jrue Holiday makes a lot of sense for Milwaukee. He's a good defensive guard, can fill some of that same defensive role that Eric Bledsoe played, but with a little more playmaking and consistent shooting, and he shows up in the playoffs and all sorts of stuff like that. I think it's just a clear-cut upgrade over Eric Bledsoe. Jrue Holiday's been underrated, but almost so underrated that he's overrated, if that makes any sense. People talk about him so much in an underrated context that now he's kind of become a little bit overrated in that way. I don't know. It's just kind of a weird thing. I like Jrue Holiday as a player. Just the weird thing is that he can be an expiring contract. He has got a player option after next year, and so if things go south, the Bucks could really be up a creek here. But as for right now, if you can retain Jrue Holiday and retain Giannis, this team is going to be really, really good for the next 4 or 5 years as Jrue ages, maybe even more than that, really. If they can lock these guys up, this is a pretty solid core. So I like the fit there. And then for New Orleans, this is a total steal, dude. 3 first-round picks, even if they're going to be late, and 2 swaps, like, holy crap, dude. That's a lot. That's a lot of picks. And then Bledsoe and Hill, I would not be surprised if either of them get rerouted either. They're kind of in a similar situation to as the Thunder, the Pelicans are. The Pelicans, they're not in full rebuild mode because they have a lot of young talent already, specifically Zion Williamson. So they're not going to be like trying to tank over the next couple of years. I think they are still kind of trying to be competitive. But that doesn't mean that they're going to hold on to Bledsoe and Hill. I would not be surprised to see both of them rerouted. Hill's probably a little easier to trade because he's less expensive, and I believe he has less years on his contract, even though I think he's a little bit older. But you could probably get something back for George Hill. Bledsoe will be harder to move because that contract is a pretty negative asset right now. What is he, like 15, 16 million a year for like the next 4, like 3 or 4? So that Bledsoe contract is pretty bad. But if you can find a taker, great. If not, then just hold on to him until you can. I don't know if it'll happen this year, but maybe next offseason you can find a taker for Eric Bledsoe. And if he starts being a locker room guy, like a bad locker room guy, and starts pouting and doesn't want to be on a rebuilding team, whatever, you can just bench him. It doesn't even really matter. You want those point guard minutes to go to Lonzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker anyway. So if you can find a trade for Bledsoe, cool. If not, it doesn't hurt to just not give him minutes. So again, I really like this for New Orleans. The picks are great. For Milwaukee, I like it if Giannis resigns. It doesn't matter. If Giannis signs the Supermax deal, nothing else matters. Give up 5 million first-round picks for Giannis. Like, seriously, he's just that good of a player. You do whatever you have to do to keep him. And I'll talk about that with his next move as well. The Bucks are going all in for next year, and even if it doesn't make them immediately a title contender for next season, it sets them up to have, if they can retain Giannis, they're going to be good for a long time. So the Bucks are also acquiring Bogdan Bogdanovic as well as Justin James in a sign-and trade for Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson. This is another big, the Bucks are pushing all of their chips to the middle of the table. They are ready to go and ready to contend and ready to prove to Giannis that they are, gonna be a competitive team for the next 5-6 years, and this is certainly a way to do that. Bogdanovic, restricted free agent from the Kings. The Kings are not going to have to pay him, and they're getting back a couple of nice pieces in DiVincenzo. Even DJ Wilson is something too. and Ilyasova is just there for salary filler. We don't know the terms of the Bogdanovic deal yet. I don't even think this is technically legal because free agency doesn't open till Friday, but it sounds like this has been agreed to, and it's probably going to be around 15-16 million per year for Bogdanovic, for like, maybe 15 per year for like 4 years is about what I'm thinking, maybe like 17 or 18, who knows what the terms of this are. But it's a pretty complicated sign and trade, but this is great for Milwaukee. They can now trot out a starting unit of Jrue Holiday, Bogdanovic, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and Brook Lopez, which is pretty scary. You got a lot of shooters on that floor. Pretty much 4 shooters in Giannis. Giannis isn't a shooter, but obviously he's a 2-time MVP now. And the rest of them are pretty solid shooters. All these guys are pretty good defensively. Bogdanovic isn't amazing, but Brook Lopez and Jrue Holiday, it really sets them up to be maybe they're the favorite in the East next year. Who knows? Depending on what the coaching staff does with this roster and how they fill out the bench, because they pretty much traded all their entire bench away. This is going to be a brand new team, but the Bucks are looking pretty exciting for next year. I think they're going to be really solid. And for Sacramento, DiVincenzo's a nice young piece. And that's really what the bulk of this deal comes down to. You don't have to pay Bogdanovic. I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't picks involved. I guess the Bucks kind of just gave up all of their picks to the Pelicans, of course. But I was, maybe like a couple seconds or something. I guess there's still time for that to come out. But as of right now, we have no reports on there being draft picks included. So if the Kings are getting picks out of this, I like it more for them. If not, I feel like you probably could have gotten a little bit more for Bogdanovic or just retained him because he's a good player. So it feels like the Kings probably didn't get quite enough back, but I'll reserve judgment because there might be some more involved. But I really like this for the Bucks, not as much for the Kings, but really what this is about is the Bucks are they just threw the hammer down, and they're proving to everybody that they're serious about really trying to push for a title. All right, that's everything. So this is going to go up Tuesday morning, and I will be back tomorrow with recaps of everything that went down Tuesday during the day. So hopefully, there's going to be some crazy stuff go down tomorrow. Maybe James Harden. I don't know. I guess I'll just mention this really quickly. We now know that James Harden has effectively requested a trade from the Rockets, but only a trade that sends him to the Nets. It's looking like he wants to go play with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and has basically said, trade me, but only to Brooklyn. So that gives the Rockets very little leverage. And how much is Brooklyn willing to give up in a potential deal? It's going to have to be a lot of draft picks and, obviously salary filler, including like Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie and Jared Allen, and all of those guys would have to be included, as well as a bunch of draft picks. But the Rockets, we've seen reports that they want Kyrie Irving back, which I don't think that'll happen because obviously the whole reason that Kevin Durant went there was so that he could team up with Kyrie Irving, and so you're risking alienating both Kevin Durant and potentially James Harden because maybe he doesn't want to be there if Kyrie's not there. So that's pretty complicated. I don't know if that'll ever go down. I still think that there's a chance that this ends up similar to Kawhi, where Kawhi requested a trade and said, send me to LA. And the Spurs were like, you know what? No, you're going to Toronto because Toronto gave them the package that they were looking for. And so maybe Houston decides, hey, it's time to move on from Harden, but the best package is not going to be from the Brooklyn Nets, and so maybe they send him elsewhere, and they say, you know what, you're just going to have to deal with it because you requested a trade, and this is where you're going to go. So I don't know. Maybe that goes down tomorrow, who knows, or at like 4 a.m. tonight. I have no idea. This James Harden stuff is crazy. Russell Westbrook is still on the market, and we still haven't seen any draft picks at the top of the draft be traded, which we're definitely anticipating. That probably won't go down until maybe the night of the draft, an hour or two before and during. But we're gearing up for an exciting couple days in the NBA. So that's going to be it for me today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.